Order. Today, the committee meets to discuss the IRS budget and tax filing season, which closed yesterday. I want to thank Commissioner Werfel for being here at a very busy time for everybody at the agency. There are lots of issues to discuss, and one that certainly is important to the American people's direct file. Anyone who denies that the direct file pilot was a huge success, my guess is just living in another universe. It was open to a fairly small percentage of taxpayers, but the reviews it got from its initial users were overwhelmingly positive. It seems like a whole lot of people were very stunned that a federal agency, particularly one as frequently vilified as the IRS, was able to build a helpful website that works. The tens of thousands of taxpayers who used direct file this year collectively saved millions on fees that they would have paid to one of the tax software giants. The website was user-friendly. It was quick and easy to use. It didn't hassle users with upcharges for add-on services they didn't need. Direct file showed that the IRS could build a good tool that people like because it saves Americans time and money. No surprise then that the people who oppose it are absolutely furious and once again are doing everything they can to stop it from growing. The detractors said it didn't attract enough users, but tens of thousands of new users came in over the last week. The IRS hit its goal of 100,000 taxpayers using the system. There is no doubt in my mind that this will be more popular every year. Others have said that the cost estimates were too vague. But the fact is, there's always challenges with pilot programs. Now that the IRS has tested this system and set a baseline, the costs are going to be clear going forward. Finally, there's some who said the whole project was unnecessary. They've said that taxpayers have the option of using free file systems through the big tax prep companies. They may have had a valid argument years ago because before the tax prep giants got caught hiding free file options from eligible taxpayers. They were conning people into forking over hundreds of dollars they didn't need to spend. Congress simply cannot go around trusting the big tax prep companies to do the right thing. For some of them, their version of free file is the freedom for Americans to pay them even more. Bottom line, direct file is long overdue, and it's the kind of public service the federal government ought to be providing to Americans whenever it can. I understand the IRS and Treasury Department are now evaluating how the pilot program went over the last few months. Personally, I believe that this program should be expanded. I'm looking forward to the day when Oregonians come up to me in one of our 51 Fred Meyer grocery stores. I have been to every single one of them, having had a chicken in each one, to tell me how thrilled they were to save time and money with direct file. On the topic of vastly improved federal programs, I'll turn now to the IRS's continued success in improving customer service during the filing season. The IRS answered 1 million more calls with live assistance than it did during last year's filing season. It got call waiting times down to 3 minutes. It saved taxpayers 1.4 million hours of time than in previous years they would have spent basically listening to all the music and just being on hold. It smashed its goals for in-person service. Despite this success, apparently there have been some complaints from the other side of the aisle that the administration is asking for money to sustain this progress. I'm not sure what's behind that. Maybe they want to go back to the bad old days when taxpayers sat on hold for hours and couldn't get timely refunds. Doesn't make any sense to me. For the second filing season in a row, the IRS is proving that it can provide a top-notch level of taxpayer service when Congress gives it the resources. Just a few words to close on enforcement. The IRS has announced some major enforcement efforts in the last few months. This includes cracking down on 125,000 cases where wealthy individuals, many of them people who bring in more than $1 million a year, never even filed a tax return. Let me repeat this. This is not people who figure out how to game the system. They are sufficiently contemptuous of the rules that they never even filed a tax return. There's also a new effort to root out the abuse of tax breaks for corporate jets, high-flying executives who take tax write-offs for personal travel, for example. And in my view, the IRS ought to look at similar abuses with corporate-owned yachts. When it comes to yachts, the abuses seem to me to be even more blatant. Yachts produce big write-offs, but I find it hard to believe that anybody is yachting to a board meeting. If Congress continues to cut the IRS's funding, or if the Inflation Reduction Act funding expires and Congress doesn't add more, we know exactly what will happen. Wealthy tax cheats will have an easier time getting away with breaking the law. And that means misery for typical Americans who are just trying to do their civic duty when tax filing season comes around every spring. That's an outcome that the vast majority of the American people oppose. Lots to discuss this morning, colleagues. I want to thank Commissioner Werfel for joining us. I look forward to the question and answer. Senator Crapo.